Welcome to the Performing Animal Rights podcast, where we explore the intersection of creative practice and the animal rights movement. I'm your host, Ben Hunt, performance artist and researcher in performance studies and animal rights activism. Each episode, I sit down with activists and creatives who are using their arts to push boundaries and challenge the way we think about animals, the environment, and our roles in both. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by two hilarious and passionate guests, Molly Elwood, a copywriter, creative strategist, and animal rights activist, and Jake Yapp, a comedian, musician, and host of the Vegan Life magazine podcast. Molly is the creator of Elwood Dog Meat, a satirical website at elwooddogmeat.com, designed to provoke thought on ethical hypocrisy by treating dogs as a meat product in the same way that society treats cows, pigs, chickens, and so on. And Jake is a long-time broadcaster and podcaster, known for his sharp, satirical takes on everyday life and his efforts to bring humour to vegan activism. In today's episode, we'll discuss how they use satire and comedy to create change, the challenges of balancing humour with advocacy, and their vision for the future of animal rights activism. So, let's get started. Thanks for coming along. So I suppose the big question is, how did it all start, Molly? How did the idea of creating a satirical dog meat, organic meat farm come about and inspired you to do it?
So I really hated all the vegan bumper stickers that were out there. I thought that nothing was really fitting the bill that I wanted to put on my car. I didn't think that I wanted something that was going to change people's minds and also be funny. So I thought it'd be funny to just make a dog meat sticker to put on my car. And then I figured, well, it should go to a website so people think it's real, and that'd be pretty funny. And so I built the website to go with it. And then I went, oh, wait, I should probably make social media with it. And then I made social media with it, and then it went viral, and suddenly I was running a dog meat farm. Alcohol is a fabulous activist tool.
Yeah, nice. So it, like an avalanche, just kept rolling, a snowball kept building and building and became this. Would you say it's viral?
It has,
I
goes
describe
viral
it as
sometimes.
fungal.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
you
yeah,
want to get
yeah.
it checked out.
Yeah.
Don't ignore that.
Was it just a bolt out of the blue, like a light bulb moment, or was the things brewing in the background? Was it conversations you were having with fellow vegans?
Yeah. I actually was part of a bigger conversation about like what's the most impactful way to change people's minds. You know, there's a lot of vegan messages that are just about vegan is peace and love, and that's all nice and sweet, but that's not what's going to change people's minds, I didn't think. And then you can talk about the environment, and sure, these are all helpful things, but those aren't gut responses. You're not going to be like, I'm going to go vegan because this. And so I really think it's the animal welfare aspect of veganism that is what drives the people who go vegan overnight. So that's where it came from. My background's in advertising, is trying to do just headlines of what I think. And that one was so funny. It stuck with me for about a year before I made it. I was like, I think I need to make that dog meat sticker.
Nice. That's really cool. So I suppose with that in mind, when you were thinking about a website, was it a case of you just created a website and just went with it, or did you look at these other, because you do parody a lot on social media? Is the website parody as well, or is that just?
Yeah. The website definitely comes from a conglomeration of multiple organic, free-range, pasture-fed animal websites. And I just took their pieces and put it together into mine. So yeah, I'm just a thief. It all comes from them. And the point of that is that then you can't argue. You can't say, well, that's not what they said. And I'm like, nope, that's exactly what you said.
Yeah. It's thoroughly, like, I find it incredible how thoroughly thought through it is. Different entry points, and there's different like layers you can peel back. So you do those posts where it's like, this happens in, what is it? This happens in real life, or like, this is real life, or, oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just put one up recently. It was because I had some Instagram posts get taken down. And it's really funny because it's not even pictures of dogs. These are pictures of lambs. These are pictures that would be allowed if we identified the animal correctly. And so I love saying, like, this is me speaking to the audience, being like, this is real. This is 100% real what I'm showing you. And yet it's not being allowed
You have a
just with the caption
you
being
have a
different.
rule that there's no AI, is that right?
Yes, I have had only maybe a couple AI pictures, but yeah, I want everything to be real, and that's one of the things is like and the reason I don't show like dog meat is I want this to look like the meat that people are eating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's really impactful. But again, that's rich for me to say as a fellow vegan and animal rights activist that it's impactful. I suppose for you from the inside, what's the journey been like with reactions from both vegans and non-vegans? So from the beginning with your website and through the evolution of Elwoods, has it evolved? Has the responses evolved? Has it reached more non-vegans, would you feel? Have you got access to that kind of data?
I can tell about the new users that come visit the website. I don't know if they're vegan or not, but you would think based on the volume, they can't all be vegan. I get a lot of messages from people who say that this made them go vegan or their friends saw it. They're vegan and their friends saw it and made them go vegan, or at least made them think about it. Some people say that this is the first time they understood what veganism was about. And whether they went vegan afterwards, I don't know. But I think that there's something really powerful about planting the seeds. And I know that a lot of us really want to close the deal on veganism immediately.
I
But
think it's a sort of critical mass moment, isn't it? I feel like with each sort of vegan moment that someone encounters who's not vegan, it sort of adds a drop or two of water into a kind of cup that's slightly off kilter. And when you get that final drop that just tips the center of gravity over, and then suddenly that's the moment. And you never, on a good day, you get to be that final drop that kind of tips people over the balance. Those are obviously the best days. You never know how many drops you're going to fill the cup with and how close people are to tipping over.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good point, and it's quite the seed thing. Yeah, you're right. The pouring the cup, the filling the cup is definitely something that is kind of part of the discourse of activism. Like, especially when you feel that kind of weight of it, and you think, well, every little helps, and everyone's doing their bit in their different ways. There's a few strands to Elwood that fascinate me in the sense of, well, first off, the voicemails are really interesting. Is that real?
yes, those are real. I regularly get a few voicemails a week. When stuff's going viral, they stack up. And I need to do more with them. I haven't done a voicemail video in a while. But yeah, that was one of the first things I did when I set up the website. First, it was a Skype number, and then I found another place to do it. And I just set up a voicemail and let it run. And that's really fun of like capturing these little snippets of time of people having, because the voicemail message is very much like, hi, you've reached Elwood's Farm. We're out with the dogs right now. Please leave your order number. And I've got the sound of dogs barking in the background. And it's really fun actually to listen to, because sometimes it's just like there's this long pause and then you hear multiple people laughing and then it hangs up. Or people will call. I get a lot of orders and they always order pug bacon, and they're always being like, I'm so funny. Look at me owning the vegans, making my meat order. But then every so often it's, sometimes it's vegans being like, love you guys, thanks so much. And then other times it's people getting really mad and being like, I'm going to find out where you are.
Oh God, yeah. I feel like it's its own study of like of humans in general, like how they interact and how they absorb information. It's a real interesting kind of, what's it called again? Like a model for activism and for like I'm trying to think, what's the word? It's like a culture jamming kind of thing going on with Elwood, which is really cool.
It's a nice media literacy study as well.
I think what I find interesting from the performing arts side of things, as it is a kind of it's this kind of online, it started online and then it's grown and grown, performative in all aspects. Now it's being done on the streets. It's an outreach, a physical outreach. Can you talk more about how that came about?
Yeah, so somebody actually just reached out to me after I had made it and asked if they could go out and do a dog meat tasting. And I was like, I don't know if I'd even done a table yet, because my
Yeah.
the first event I did was Vegan Dale, and I just did a table and set it up like a booth. And then somebody asked if they could do it themselves. And I immediately, at first I said no, because I was like, I don't want to get sued. A drunk man knocked everything off my booth and got very verbally aggressive with me. And I was like, I can't just let people go out and do this. And it turned out I was like, actually, I think I can. I just tell me I'm not responsible and here's some brochures. And the brave vegans went out and did it and proved me wrong. And it's amazing. They're out there doing it.
Yeah, they're doing also, like, I've seen, I was talking to someone who's doing it up in Glasgow, and then I've seen them doing it in London as well. But they're popping up all the time. Is there well, there's a few things here in the sense of, like, it's becoming a copy and paste thing, isn't it? It's becoming as in it's taking your brand that you created and becoming beyond what you're generating. And how do you feel about that as someone who's a creative, but then also how do you feel of it in the case of activism? Because you want everyone to see it and you want everyone to do it, but then obviously what happens if your standards slip and things like
Right.
that?
The
That is a
question for
really
right
great
now.
question.
Yeah,
Yes.
I do have to confess about being very protective of my idea and particular about how I'd like it to be done. But up until now, I didn't have the time or ability to say anything. I'm grateful because you also hit the nail on the head. You want as many people as possible to do it. But then I get hate messages sometimes from people who experienced an Elwood thing and it was done in a way that was not the way I would do it. And that might have been exposing children to scary vegan ideas. I don't know. So I'm not going to point out specific things, but then it's like, how do I control this? And it's out of my, it's bigger than anything I've made now. And that's a bit scary. So actually, Jake and I just made a guidelines for activists, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, we came to the realization that whenever you make something, you never want to release it into the world until you feel like it's perfect and you've got it exactly as good as it can possibly get. Elwood has almost become a collaborative movement now where, as you say, people are going out and they're kind of doing it and they've got their own take on it. They might wear certain outfits or take a certain line with it and stuff. And having to release that sort of creative control is really hard. But we came to a realization that, if we've got 1,000 people doing that activism, and even if we feel subjectively that it's only 20% as good as we could do, the net gain is still many percentiles greater than if we just kept control of it as an idea. It's far better that more conversations are happening, even if some of them aren't, textbook or brilliantly successful. Actually, it becomes a numbers game, and it is about getting the message out there as widely as possible, I think.
And also, to be clear, I haven't had anything that was like, this is only 20% as good as we
No,
could
absolutely.
do. It's more like getting a message that somebody was like, it was like some little kid had a dog with him, and one of the activists said, "We're going to eat your dog." And they said that to a child, and the child was just devastated, and the parents had to explain that it wasn't real. And I was like, oh, yeah. But we made some really nice rules, and the main rule was that you have to behave as though you're actually an employee of a family farm. And what would you actually say? And that is just such a nice border. Beyond talk, you can talk about veganism when the time comes, but up until then, you would never say that as an employee, even if you wanted to. If you're in customer service, you cannot.
It's kind of like if the Disney store sold dog meat, how would you behave as an employee?
That's perfect.
That's some great.
Do you plan to, or do you offer training? Do you do Zooms or anything like that to kind of onboard people, or is it more of a trust thing of here's the guidelines? There you
Right
go.
now, it's a trust thing, and up until I think we just put the video, a video kind of guidelines that we put up, but that was probably last month, and you can find it on the website. But up until then, yeah, and even up until then, I also had a section on my website that said, do whatever you'd like, download, make your own stuff. And people have made so many fantastic things in the last few years doing things with Elwoods. But I also then had people who went and put the Elwood banner in front of like and did a big political stunt with it and made us political, which I like, which is really, after the election right now, it's a hot button topic. But I'm like, we want as many vegans as possible, and I can't alienate one side or the other when we're saying stop eating animals. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, but I could really, in my conversations, there is that struggle of like creating something pure and powerful and kind of knowing that it's got this energy and then kind of giving it to the world. And it's not like theatre where you present it in a safe space and it's like, you've seen it, you can think what you want, but you've seen it. It's activism, which is very much a tangible thing where you take it and it's, you want it to be viral, but then you want it to be as effective as possible. But Jake, you're right. You also want,
Well,
it's better
and
than
also
nothing.
it can be thrilling. I
Better.
mean, I've seen some dog meat tastings that people have done for Elwoods, and I mean, just this is not me walking back on my 20% thing, and that was only a hypothetical. But you see people do it, and you kind of
Yeah.
go, "This is phenomenal!" Like I never could have done it that well. Some people, their patience and their calm and the way they sort of kind of hold the line of the sort of the deceit for longer than I would dare. I mean, I've actually never done it. I've gone and filmed Molly, but I maintain that I'd get punched really fast. I mean, I'm rolling the dice every time I step out the door, let alone doing dog meat activism. So I don't do it because I'm a coward. So I'm always in awe of anybody who steps up and does it.
Yeah, for sure. I think anyone who puts themselves forward to talk about something that people don't really want to talk about, but then also with a satirical edge to it and kind of playing a role is another layer to it, which definitely takes some real confidence and creativity. So that it's really good. I mean, in a way, there's a thing to be said there that Elwood's kind of is a great template to improve activism and activists, or as part of that, as a seed of that, maybe.
I think for some people it's quite empowering because if you're playing a role, for some people that becomes something they can hide behind. They actually feel less exposed and they're more confident.
I feel the same way, and I'm definitely not as confident as I am when I'm selling dog meat. It's easy because I know the rules and I know how to play it and I know how to interact with people. But if I were on the street talking to people about veganism and, say, a cube of truth, I can't do the same. I don't feel as confident. It's been a unique way to get people into activism who may not have been into it before, too, because it is not as graphic and it doesn't require you to have as big of debate skills either. Like, to be honest, you're presenting the idea and my outcome is, can I get a brochure in somebody's hand? Can I get a card? Can I get them to go to the website? And that's the end of it. Like, the only thing is, can we get them to engage in veganism long enough that it sticks, as opposed to, the cube of truth, which I think is also very effective. But as an activist, it's scary because if I'm not skilled at it and I don't do this for that often, how am I going to follow the chain to get to the closing deal of?
I think more than anything, and it's easier for me to say this than Molly, it's kind of why I'm here really. It's fun. I think Molly's invented this fantastic toy for vegans. Everybody wants to play, whether that's pretending to make an order for pug bacon, inventing new dog-based food products, or going out and doing activism. It's one of those delicious, awful, fizzy ideas that plants itself in your brain. And people can't resist it. They just want to participate in one way or another. The cube of truth, all of those things, I would find very daunting as an undertaking. I do think it's maybe tricky, kids, sometimes some of that stuff, the more graphic stuff. Whereas this is playful and fun.
And there are things too that, while I have, I may not promote all the stuff that people are making, a lot of it is solely because it's not on brand for Elwood's. Like, I have to maintain my social media as a fake family farm, and sometimes I cross the border a little bit myself. But I have people all the time who are sending me things that they've made. There's somebody who makes all these AI toys, Elwood Dog Meat themed farm toys, and somebody has made all these Lego. He does viral Lego stuff, and he makes little scenes, and the people in the scenes are like reading books that have Elwood Dog Meat on the cover. And then it goes viral on Reddit, and people are like, don't Google the name of that book they're reading. Like, and it's it's so fun and lovely to just see that. And also, like, lifting vegan logic is always eating dog meat. Like, in all of his videos now, he's always eating dog meat. And what's nice is then it obviously that stuff doesn't need to be Elwood's, and I'm not saying that Elwood's any reference now to dog meat is because of Elwood's.
I'm kidding.
It's fun. I mean, it's just really fun just to be like, here's the one time that vegans get to mock non-vegans.
Yeah, it is fun. It's playful. You're right. I think there's a few things there. I mean, one of the big things that I'm really interested in, as in dog meat, like there has been examples that, and like dog milk as well, things like that.
Yeah, we have a
Conor
dog
Schreiner.
dairy.
One other organization, I think it was Viva, did a bit
Spit roast dog,
or
yeah, I
something like
saw
that. Yeah. What I find really interesting is you've centered the performance as because a big part of my research is saying we need performance to be the center of it rather than just an add-on or a little thing we do to enhance a campaign, but actually be the campaign in a way, which you see, and you've just been talking about how it mobilizes activists on quite a big scale than a lot of animal organizations would actually be very envious, because it is this thing that can be played with and has that kind of license to do that and to be played for. And then going back to the point of how activists want to do that. And I've found in my conversations that really successful creative outputs are usually twofold, in the sense of it's impactful to the target audience, and it's also impactful for the activists themselves, the participants. And I think that's really exciting in the sense of you've created something so strong and powerful, and then giving it to these activists to really feel empowered by. I think that's a really good sign of something like really exciting and something that just keeps like snowballing. With satire, I suppose, with the playfulness and the fun, with satire, there's an interesting thing that I grapple with quite a lot about animal rights is based on extreme and mass suffering. Like, it's everywhere, every corner. It's just like unbearable. I think about it's in the back of my brain all the time. You see it, not even just the dramatic stuff at factory farms, but you see it with suffering animals, or pets, or whatever. How you might not grapple with this, and that's good if you don't. But is there any grappling there with, like, you see Elwood as like an outlet to kind of find a way to get this message across, or is it a case of satire can go too far? And that
That's
might
a
be just
huge
I don't
question.
think it is my
It's
opinion,
just-
but can satire for animal rights, especially when we're dealing with other suffering,
yeah.
can it go too far? And
I think if you're going to ask me to talk philosophically about satire,
Do.
and I think with humor generally, the question that's always worth asking is who pays for each joke? So, any joke you tell, someone probably pays for it. Now, whoever's paying for that, my mother-in-law, well, why should she pay for my joke? That's not fair. She's not there. And I'm probably presenting a grotesque caricature of probably a very sympathetic lady. So when you look at this specifically, satire generally is considered to be kind of fair game, because the idea is that you are mocking people with power. And Elwood's firmly falls into that category because this is about dominion over animals. So yeah, the people we're attacking are the people who have the power to decide whether animals live or die based on their purchase of a sandwich. So yes, are they fair game? Yeah, they are. Even if they're ignorant, they're fair game. And what I think is good about the Elwood's model is it doesn't actually assume any particular knowledge from its targets. And these are the focus objectives of the satire we're doing. And so I think that's how it works satirically. And they are the people who pay for the joke. I do think there's a balance whereby if someone is coming from a position of comparative ignorance, and I think a lot of omnivores are very ignorant, not teetering into a point where you're mocking them. It's not open season. Just because someone decides to eat meat, that doesn't mean you can mock them for the way they shape their eyebrows. You have to stay focused. You have to home in on that one topic. And so if you then start to just excessively mock people, if you start calling someone a Karen or something like that, then you're being reductive, then you're being unfair, you're being personal, and you're not attacking people for the thing that they rightly need to have interrogated about their decisions. The end. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
This is so true, because I think this really feeds into something that, like, I don't have a lot of time to run the admin on my social media pages, but when I do, I have to sit in there, and a lot of comments I'm deleting are actually from vegans. And it's vegans being reductive to the people they're trying to have an argument with. They're calling them stupid. They're calling them, calling out like their regions where they live, or I don't know, religion or politics and stuff. And I'm like, that's not the point. This is not what we're here for. You talk about the food they're eating, but we're not going to get into personal things because it's not important.
And it's none of our business.
Yeah.
Whereas, if you're financing the destruction of animals, that might be my business.
For sure. If there's that's great. Thank you for that. That's really succinct and clear answer. I think there's always a debate in the animal rights movement. Well, I don't know what your experiences of it, but I just feel like everyone's debating each other all the time to find the most effective way or what's right and what's wrong, and it can become quite sticky. I suppose on satire, and like you said, Molly, like you managing vegan comments, this might be a bit of a barbed question. Have you found vegans, activists, because of the subject matter, and my research is in trauma and how activists use trauma to stay motivated and perform, and using the performance to either channel that or use it for a positive thing. Is there a case of, in your experience of activists who interact with Elwoods, is there a percentage that really don't enjoy the humor around it or lack the humor?
Oh yeah, definitely. There are definitely vegans who hate Elwood dog meat. They think for many reasons, and I think all of them are valid, forgetting the fact of the treatment of dogs. Dogs are treated horribly by many people, even by people who say they love their dogs. Dogs are treated horribly. You think about the amount of animals that are euthanized. There's an actual dog meat trade. There's activists who spend their lives trying to stop that. You have people who are like, you're just showing the bodies of other animals and everyone's laughing about it. And some people don't, they've been through a lot, or they don't have the capacity for that type of humor, and it's painful for them to see. But you're not going to engage some members of the public without humor. So I think,
let me jump in,
because I know that it's such, you help.
Almost all, particularly vegan activism, is about a pull. You're trying to pull people into veganism. You're trying to pull them towards your values by whatever strategy that is, be that charm, confrontation, showing them the terrible truth, whatever it is, however repellent some of that imagery might be. You're trying to draw them towards you, to align with you and your values. The difference with Elwood's is that it's a push. We are doing something that is so repellent and so awful in the eyes of almost everybody, be they meat eaters or not, that we're pushing them away. And it's a completely different system. And so the more they express their disgust at what you've done, the more license you have to kind of go further. And that's what makes it, I think, quite unique in terms of activism. For some vegans, playing that role and ostensibly doing something that awful is so unthinkable to them. They can't get on board with it and they can't deal with it. But I think we have to use every tool, every weapon in our arsenal. We have to try every trick we can think of to try to recruit more vegans. Personally, I'm not cool with putting up a stand on a Saturday morning in the high street with really graphic imagery of animal abuse. I think it's very distressing to children. I think it makes it kind of difficult. So personally, that's not for me. Should people still do it? Yeah, probably. And so I feel the same way about Elwood's, which is, okay, you might not like it, but it's the same end goal that we have. And if it's not for you, I hear you, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing it. Was that all right, Molly?
That was perfect. It was perfect. You did so good. Well, it's so funny because as you said that just reminded me of like, there's moments of like I would, I don't, it's not self-loathing, but it's like the moments when when I get really, when Elwood's content's really graphic is when I'm really angry. It's like I found some news that really makes me just so mad. And so now I'm in iStock and it's like you come to realizing what you're looking at. And I'm looking at, my search term is like backyard butchered lamb. And it's like hands butchered lamb, whatever it is. And then as I realize I've been scrolling through pages of like eyeballs and horrible things and suddenly going, I can't believe what I'm looking at. I can't believe that I'm objectifying these animals. I can't believe these animals are gone and I'm going to now use them and people are going to laugh at it. And I get so mad.
I think I get it because obviously I do a lot of Elwood's work and go through the same process as Molly, where you see the worst atrocities performed on animals as part of the work. And then you're trying to kind of find the funny within that. And you do end up feeling furious about it. And I think that, for the vegans, we've had a lot of conversations, Molly and I, about the function of Elwood's, which is twofold. It's directly to try to persuade people to try veganism and commit to it. Secondarily, but actually perhaps joint first, really, and almost first above that, it's to recruit more vegans, to turn them into active activists and get them out there on the streets and having those conversations with people. And we're increasingly realizing that that's perhaps the most important component. And so when we do something that is funny, that is for the kind of esprit de corps of the vegans, if it kind of makes them laugh, gives them a bit of a release of tension. Because I don't know about you, but on my social media feeds, I see terrible, terrible things happening to animals all the time. And it's posted by vegans. It's like, I went vegan because I can't handle this stuff. Like, surely I get a free pass. I don't need to see this now. And so the fact that we never show anything that you wouldn't see in a supermarket really is important. And I think that actually sometimes finding some humor to keep the vegans going is really important, and to keep them motivated, because I think sometimes you can despair. It's hard not to.
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. I think with the humour thing, what I've observed from Elwood and outreach that embodies humour is that access, as in getting vegans active, I think is really exciting. Oh yeah. So the access here as well is the big thing that a lot of vegans here, especially dinner tables, or with family, friends, is like they are animal lovers, but they're eating a pig in front of them, basically, or bits of pig, or bits of cow, or bits of sheep, or whatever. So Elwood is a distilled, we're all animal lovers here. We love dogs, but we eat pigs. That trope, which is so exciting for any vegan. If you become vegan yesterday or today even, that thing's popping in your head. A lot of people say, why do you become vegan? Especially for me, like, I loved animals when I was little. I had loads of pets and it was a big thing for me. And then it's like, oh, okay, so if I love them, so I shouldn't be eating animals. So playing with that and kind of bringing this kind of participatory kind of nature to it in an exciting way is exactly what you said, Jacob. It's a perfect ramp into activism, as well as not just a ramp in the sense of just to get into it. It's also a very valid, exciting form of activism, an original kind of outreach, which always feels like a struggle, especially with the more serious stuff, like you mentioned, with showing graphic footage or whatever. And there's a whole thing about consent as well, which is sticky. So yeah, it's really exciting that it's really interesting to hear your processes as well from the case of it's still a struggle. It's not like you're going, hey, there's some more things to do and this will be funny, this will be funny. It's kind of like, this is worth it, but my goodness, we are still animal lovers ourselves and we still get pulled through the ringer. So it's interesting from my point of view to hear you go, I'm traumatized doing this.
And it's funny because so I got a lot of hate recently, and it's just forgive the pun, it was a perfect storm because it was Trump said the comment about eating the dogs, And I made some viral content, which attracted a bunch of people who didn't know this was vegan activism. They just thought it was a joke. They're like, haha, somebody has made a dog eating thing. But on the tail of that, the very next week was a massive hurricane. And so I had the hurricane hit our farm, and I took posts from farmers who were leaving their animals behind, and I have to say also, that's awful, but they also don't have a choice. And my purpose of sharing this stuff is not for me to mock the people whose posts I stole. Sure, we can all have our own private feelings about how you feel about somebody leaving 50 cows to drown. Awful. What are they supposed to do?
No.
I don't know. But that's the question that you have to ask yourself as a meat eater. What
Yeah.
more am I paying for? I'm not just paying for this. I'm paying for all of the catastrophic things that can happen around having to have this many animals. But I got in a lot of trouble because people were like, I came here because I thought this was funny. This isn't funny. How dare you do this? And so I did a follow-up post to that. And that follow-up post was saying, nothing about this is funny. Actually, in reality, nothing I post, while it may incidentally sometimes be funny, for the most part, if you think about it, if it were true, it's not funny. And I said that you can keep following us. I'm going to continue to tell, like you said at the beginning of this, I'm going to continue to tell the truth about the real things. And it's fun that I can stay in character and say that. I'm going to keep telling you what happens on our farm, and you can decide if you want to keep supporting me as a farmer. And it's such a delicious, like, cheeky way to tell you, are you okay with this? And a farmer should be able to say that too. Utter heartbreak for farmers who have to be like, another line I just recently had was like, you get mad at me for doing these things, but I'm like, I was up till 2 a.m. doing horrible things. I get up really early and I scrubbed all the blood off my hands so I could serve you meat that you could feel okay about. And we're asking farmers to completely hide the horrors that they're doing in order for us to feel good about the bologna we buy.
I think the biggest problem for vegans is that we get very upset, inevitably, because what we're seeing is atrocious. And it's how we deal with that. Sometimes satire is really good for taking something unbelievably toxic and transmuting it into something that still has power, but not toxicity. I think that's often the purpose of satire, is to call out something terrible, but then present it in a way that you can actually take. I also think that overcoming the anger to some extent is so important, particularly once you're facing the public. You've got to get past that angry stage. And then there's so many times I'll post stuff on social media with hot, wet eyes and instantly regret it because I know I'm not going to bring anyone over. And I think that this is the point, is that there has to be no limit to your compassion if you're vegan, and you have to find compassion for even an average omnivore, let alone a farmer. And God knows farmers need compassion. I wouldn't do that job in a million years, but these people are trapped in systems. These are often 5th, 6th generation systems. What are they supposed to do if we don't give them an off-ramp? And so I sometimes see stuff. I saw something quite recently on social media saying, if you take part in an industry that exploits or abuses animals, we're coming for you. And I thought, what? What we should be saying is, we're coming to help. Like, that must be awful for you. Let's see what we can all do for you. Because, come on, they're human beings. Let's not be doing that. There's no reason for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's interesting thinking about when Molly is saying, it's actually, what you're doing is, it's not even funny in the sense of you're taking stuff and just putting another lens on it. It's not a case of you changing into something funny. You're mirroring it, and that mirror makes it funny because it's jarring, it's jamming our understanding of what animals are to us and our relationship to it, which is really clever because then you're not taking the mick.
There's no caricature.
Fascinating. It's really exciting though, isn't it? Because it feels like it's so obvious to us. But I think maybe there's a tension there of a lot of activists not wanting to be playful because maybe guilt involved or that trauma or that embodying of suffering, which we talked about before. think, yeah, there's a lot of things that intertwine with that.
And sometimes it's just harder to get to the details that you want to tell. It's harder to get to the topic of male maceration, the maceration of male chicks when you start off with a dog meat farm. You've got quite a few steps in the conversation to get there. But one of the things I did want to say earlier was when we talk about it as a form of activism, what's really nice about this, as opposed to other forms, is you can play the Elwoods game by yourself, alone on the street with your friends at a bar. It's as easy as having a business card that you can hand to somebody and you can say, oh my God, I found this. Or you could say, oh, have you seen it? Have you heard of this? Or you could just leave it for someone to find. Or I've used this as just a conversation starter. People are like, well, what do you do for a living? I was like, I do this. And I just wait. And I wait for them to go, wait, what? And you go, well, what do you think? And you don't have to do any work. Or you could go on the streets and hand out the business cards or coupons. And you could say, I represent this farm and I'm handing them out. And you don't need a TV. You don't need a banner. You don't need anything.
There's a couple of really interesting phenomena that happen. One is the bias accorded to the probability of this being true based on how awful it is. It's a very human thing. If you put a plank of wood on the ground and tell me to walk along it, it's not a problem. You put that 30 feet in the air and tell me to walk along it, and I'm going to give a huge bias to the fact that I might not be able to do it. And I won't be able to because it's such an awful idea. Elwood's is such an awful idea that people assume it must be real. They give such bias to the probability because they can't afford not to, because it's an awful thing. And so, if you ever think, oh, no one's ever going to believe that, I will tell people, or like people, friends who I've known for decades, who know I'm vegan and have been for over a decade. And I say, oh yeah, well I do, I'm working with this farm and it's very high welfare and stuff. And people instantly believe it because it's so awful. So it must be true. And just the second thing that's so interesting is that people are so shocked that even their sort of swearing or their reaction goes weird. And it's a really fun thing to observe that people, you kind of think, you say, yeah, so yeah, she, I work with this woman, Molly, and yeah, she harvests dogs for their meat and we eat it. Instead, they'll say something like, goodness gracious me, or something like that. And you can hear their breath going short or something like that because they don't know, they have no handle on how to react to it. So they'll go into weird sort of antiquated parlance.
That's hilarious. It goes to the nub, Molly, you were saying, like, you don't have to do much. The onus is on the people processing the information, is the audience, which is a big part of change, isn't it? Of you deciding that you want to do something because you came to that conclusion. So you offering that conclusion and triggering that to bring that conclusion along. I think even with your website, scroll to the bottom, go through all of this, get to the actual message is really powerful because it really mirrors what the most likelihood of the light bulb is earned by the audience.
Yeah. And actually, so there's two things about that. One is that before doing this, I spent so much time arguing online with people. I had a bookmark of all the, like, everything that's on the FAQ were my bookmarks. I was just like, okay, well, here's the stats about this and here's this. And people always want to argue with you about statistics or whatever it is. And so I made this as also just this argument ender. I'm like, I don't need to talk to you about these things. I'm going to send you into it and you go on a trip. And actually, so right now I'm doing kind of like, I'm reviewing how my performance was in 2024. And we found that people spend an average of 11 minutes on the website, which is huge. They're spending 11 minutes going through, is this real? And then finding out, like, well, what is all this stuff? And everything is all vegan related, and they're all, there's so many paths. And while this isn't like, I try and get people to sign up for Veganuary and everything, but I also just want them to be like, what did the Humane Society think about the way animals are treated? Or what's the psychological impact for slaughterhouse workers? Or like, and that mirrors my vegan journey, which was, seeing something that distressed me and then Googling why people are vegan and staying up till 4 a.m, researching this. And I think that's how a lot of people go vegan. It needs to be their own choice. And the absence of having a person that you have to argue with, this is just you arguing with yourself. So.
Yeah, that's nice. Arguing with yourself. It's really powerful, especially 11 minutes is a long time. By yourself at a website, going through that implement. Like, That's really powerful to hear. That's really exciting. So I suppose the last question would be, what's next, if there is anything, or is it just seeing how it goes? Is it proactive, reactive, bit of both?
Well, I think it's the end of the year, so I'm actually making my plan for next year, and I don't really know exactly quite yet. Last year we did crufts, which was really fun. I went and did some kind of undercover planting of goodie bags around for people to find, and posters in bathrooms and business cards and coats and stuff. And I think they might be on to me if I went
You're
again
definitely
next
on a
time.
watch
But
list.
we also wanted, don't let her near the dogs. I wanted to make a billboard, but we missed the deadline. So maybe we can have a billboard across from them, like, just like a sponsor of Crufts. We have a uh, bigger creative idea that we're working on right now that I don't know if we can talk about.
Go on, shall we? No.
No, it's fine.
We have, yeah,
Go-
sustain being,
keep
there might be,
tuned.
but yeah, and also
Yeah.
just trying to get more involved with activists. So we have a lot of global farms right now. I've lost track now. There's 6, maybe 7. And so trying to get more people to build Elwood websites in their language and making them feel local to their culture. So we have, just off the top of my head, we have Brazil and Spain and Norway and the Netherlands and France and Germany. And so trying to keep those up is, and it's all run, but they're all run by volunteers. It's just, it's an amazing group of people who have taken on this on their own, and they run the social media and everything. So
That's cool. Is it as going back to that question a while ago, does it feel like you've both come to the decision of kind of that's the power you're giving, or is that still a process of deciding? Are you getting more involved, less involved, or
well,
directing your own?
it's so hard because there's just the two of us. So it's hard to do. You can't really watch a lot of stuff. So there's a lot of trust and a lot of letting go of the creative freedom and being like, what works for you? And we can touch base and be like, give some feedback about what works for us. But also, it's only been around for 2.5 years. And so I think that we're all still learning, and maybe the parody is not the way to go. Maybe it ends up being something different. But I just think that there's still so much to be, and there's so much news to be told. Like, this is such a great filter for animal news about what's happening. And when something big happens, how does that actually impact farm animals? And people don't even listen to the news about it. But if you put the dog in there, suddenly we're like, oh no, bird flu. We killed 30,000 dogs.
Wow. Well, exciting. I can't wait to see what's next. Thank you so much for your time, and really good luck with that, and keep it up.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks so
thanks
much
for
for having
having
us.
us.
It was a really illuminating conversation. Yeah, thanks.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Performant Animal Rights Podcast. A huge thank you to Molly and Jake for sharing their insights and how satire and humour can play a powerful role in animal rights advocacy. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to check out their thought-provoking project, Elwood Dog Meat, at elwooddogmeat.com, and learn more about Molly at mollyelwood.com. You can also follow Jake's comedy and podcast work at jakeyapp.co.uk. For more episodes, resources, and information, visit performinganimalrights.org. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, goodbye.